Marty talked about the promised land that we all expect of a future of clean energy and a radical transformation of the industry, but consider all the pitfalls along the way. Coming slew of regulations from coal ash rules to mercury to greenhouse gas limits. It's almost impossible to predict what that regulatory environment will look like. And at the same time, there's been an explosion of new technologies to pick from, whether to build new plants or new solar or fuel cells. So it's a very difficult and challenging environment, and I think it's very easy to say, we'll let the markets decide, but it's not even clear what those markets will be and what the regulatory environment will be and what the financial incentives will be. How much money out there is there to invest? Where are the investors and executives placing their bets? What are the risks? What are the projects going forward? What will the future look like? And this is a great panel we have here to address these questions, and we're hoping to get some real insights and details about where the future is headed.
Just from a kind of put it into some perspective, last 5 years the average CapEx was about $640 million, and going forward we're going to average about $1.2 billion. And there are two main projects, two large projects that we're going to have underway. And then there's our smart grid plan, which, if you don't impact that by our stimulus award, is over $400 million, again, across our three operating utilities. Now, for anybody who's built a transmission line, there are a few things in life that are more difficult than building. Actually, building the transmission is the easiest part. It's the siting and the approvals. And this is a project, as you would expect, given just its nature and the length of it, that is subject to these challenges. One of the things that's very unique about our company, and one that I'm particularly proud of, is that we've really been able to construct constructive relationships with our regulators. We're a company, as I mentioned earlier, that's going to really live and die by the regulated business, and part of our business plan is to help our customers use less of our product. Well, you know, if you run a regulated business, there's probably two things you have to believe in. One, you have to believe in regulation. You have to believe that you can put a business case in front of your regulators and get a fair shot. And if you can do that, then you can believe the second thing, which is that you can go out and actually finance it.
I believe the money for all these major construction programs is available on Wall Street. That's not the problem. The problem is that there is no national energy policy in the United States. And here you are running a multi-billion-dollar utility. You're trying to put all that together, and you're trying to make some cohesive thought out of it, and you're trying to explain to your shareholders and to your customers exactly what's going on. All of a sudden, we're back where we were in the 70s. Big construction programs ahead of us with big rate case needs right behind that. Now, when you say, how about the money? Well, Wall Street got bagged a couple of times in this deal, all right? We got bagged in the 70s, we got bagged in the 80s, because regulators and the opponents to the utility industry all use the same tactic. Wall Street's very worried about that. We're worried about the fact that we need consistency in the regulatory process. We need to know that there's going to be rates of return that are based upon the cost of the situation that we're looking at. On the transmission side, the FERC, I think, has picked up on that. And they've given decent rates of return, and therefore the companies are able to finance without a problem.
As Ed points out, there is this tremendous uncertainty going forward, and the money's, as you say, the money is there. But what is it going for? What I want to do is pin you both down. Joe, you're one of the 22% that's actually doing something in smart grid, but with all due respect, it seems like just a small step towards what people are thinking of the eventual transformation of the industry and the kind of new power generation that will have to be built. So let's talk about the challenges that face you right now from both Ed's perspective and Joe. What projects can be done, what projects can't be done, and how far will this take us the direction we need to go?
In my view, getting smart meters in place and putting pricing signals out over the next 5 years is at least in my mind, probably the two things that I would expect will actually get done. So, you know, my view of it is that, you know, I think you're really looking at the installation of the meters and and getting, the related functionality, whether it's, automatic notice of outage, quicker truck rolls, things that you would kind of think are more the meat and potatoes of the smart grid, is really what I would expect over the next 3 to 5 years.
What I think will get built, we definitely will build more power plants. I mean, they're starting that. But there's a couple of interesting things to think about. First of all, I think that the nuclear plants themselves will be built in the southeast, where we have most of them now, except for Illinois, I guess, and Ohio. The other thing is that I think that is interesting is that when people start to take a look at all the stories we see, who's going to pay for the cost of the solar and the wind when it gets to a percentage that's meaningful? A couple of percent in the bill doesn't mean much. But once you get 15, 20% out there, and remember, the utilities in general don't own these things. They're buying them under contract. And they bought a block now, but they'll be buying more and more. And they keep saying the price is coming down. But remember, this is a business. This is not a charity. So if I'm running a wind company, I'm not giving the stuff away. I'm in it for a profit. So therefore, the price goes up, not down. The other thing is that I find interesting is a number of states have forced the companies out of the power generation business, which I thought was imprudent. But nonetheless, they did that, and you had no choice. You had to do it. But once you give up control of the means of production, you give up control of the price. And I think that's starting to hit home. As plants get shut down, as power becomes more constrained in areas, the price rises. It doesn't drop. And the Commission has no say. The companies have no say, and the Commission doesn't either, because they're just buying in the marketplace under orders. It's a very interesting dynamic that I think is kind of coming into the marketplace here, and people haven't exactly gotten their arms around it yet.
I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is all about making money, really. And, we talked about investing in the smart grid and the rate base. I was hoping, Ed, you could just tell us briefly where you think the money is to be made. I mean, clearly Wall Street made a lot of money in wind. It's dipped its toe in solar. Are those booms over? What specific things can investors make money in now?
Well, I think, first of all, the boom is not over in wind and solar by a long shot. I think that wind is very interesting, but I think it's got its basic problems in that it's windy where nobody lives, and so you need transmission lines. I mean, that's the basic story. I think solar is going to be the answer going forward, more than wind. Wind will always be there, but solar's, you can put it on every roof. You can put it in empty lots, all right? Solar's during the day when you need more power, although with the electric car, the wind thing will help out for the nighttime. But the point is, I think it's an easier product to install and to put put a windmill on your roof. Jim Rogers made an interesting point from Duke. His idea was, and they're starting it, is to put solar on the rooftops of all their customers. They would own it and they could dispatch it. But he also made a comment that said, I think it's pretty intelligent. He said, if in fact we're going to do that, we've got a ton of customers, why don't we make the solar panels and put the factory in rate base? I mean, why shouldn't? It's not a bad idea. I mean, a little far-fetched, but is it really? I don't think so.
Joe, I hope you could weigh in here. Talk about making a business model case for some of these things. You mentioned that you were able to make the business case for the smart grid. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and what other directions could you go where you can make a good business case?
Okay. We presented to our regulators our business case on the smart grid that was really based on splitting the bill from the supply to the distribution piece. Fundamentally, what we did was just present that while there were near-term operational benefits that the customer would see, that in and of itself would substantiate the investment. The real magic was over a couple-year period where you would be able to reduce the peak and therefore see a much more significant component on the supply part of the bill.
What is your experience so far in people's acceptance of both rate increases in general and peak pricing things that would change their behavior more specifically?
We've now are coming now to the completion of a second cycle of rate cases where what we have tried to do is to make sure that we're, one, eliminating regulatory lag, which is critical for a company that has to invest so much money, to keep on a total bill basis our percent increases below 10%. There's no magic to that, but having something that's in a single digit in terms of an overall bill impact seems to be much more palatable and doesn't create as much of a negative reaction to that.
I'll just mention that nobody likes a rate increase. Everybody thinks rates should only go down. And so no matter what the companies ask for, and no matter what the story is, and, you know, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars. You have to earn a return on it. As I said, it's not a charity. It doesn't matter. Nobody seems to. They focus on the number. So he's smart to keep it below 10%. 10%, double digits seem to make people crazy. So if you can keep it below that, it seems as though they're less likely to rise up, although they do anyway. I think that the best solution, which is not always on hand, is doing what Con Ed did in the past and what they're trying to do here in the future, which is a multi-year settlement. They go in and say, look, here's how much we need. This is what we're going to do. You stamp it. You know, if we don't meet it, we make adjustments, obviously. But for the next 3 years, basically rates are going to go up 2%, 5%, 7%, something like that. The answer is certainty. That's what people want. And if you can give them certainty for a couple of years, and yeah, it's going to go up, they can budget accordingly, I think that adds something to the story. And going forward with all of the big expenditures that companies have, that might not be a bad way to do it. I'll just make 2 quick comments because I think we're running out of time. One is Wall Street wants, and so does everyone else, consistency of orders. We don't want one order comes out and a rate of return on equity is 22% the next time, which God bless them, and the next time it comes out it's 5.2. I mean, where's the logic here? You see a lot of inconsistency. People want consistency of the orders if they're following the same blueprint going forward. The other thing is, unfortunately, politics is playing a huge part. With the economy in bad shape, with everything in bad shape, politics steps up like you wouldn't believe. Everybody runs for office against the utilities, in bad times especially. In good times it's a little difficult. But in bad times, I mean, they're right on their soapbox. And that's a big problem. And it is a problem for the regulators. Their job is to be fair and equitable to all sides, not one side, all right, which is what some people think. They're supposed to be fair and equitable to both sides. It's not an easy job. Having said that, if they actually take the job seriously, then they will come out with decent orders. Nobody will be happy, but everybody will be satisfied, if you know what I mean.